Imagine finding a hidden switch that simply turns off the loudest, most persistent voice in your head. For millions of people, that voice is the constant, exhausting hum of hunger. Over the last few years, a specific class of medications has essentially flipped that switch, completely disrupting how we think about obesity, willpower, and human metabolism. But just as society is getting comfortable with this massive medical breakthrough, the science has already evolved. We are suddenly stepping out of the pioneer days of these treatments and into a much more complex, high-performance era of clinical obesity medicine. The question we have to ask now is no longer just whether these tools work, but at what hidden biological cost. Are the newest, most powerful options actually better, or are they pushing our physiology faster than we can safely handle?
That is exactly the tension we need to unpack today. We are witnessing a monumental transition in real time. The initial wave of these medications fundamentally changed the global conversation by proving that chronic obesity is rarely just a moral failing or a lack of discipline. It is a biological misfire, an endocrine issue that can be biochemically corrected. But pharmaceutical evolution never stands still. We are now actively comparing the first-generation, single-target approaches with a brand new class of second-generation, multi-target compounds. It is a fascinating leap in pharmacology, but it brings up a very real, almost philosophical dilemma. When you introduce a significantly more potent tool into the human metabolic system, you are not just burning fat faster, you are completely altering the internal physiological environment. And if people do not understand the mechanics of what is actually happening inside their cells, they might end up sacrificing their long-term functional health for a short-term dramatic drop on the bathroom scale.
Let us break down those exact mechanics, because the scientific terminology alone can be incredibly overwhelming for anyone outside the medical field. Most people are highly familiar with the first wave of these drugs, which operate on a single biological pathway. It essentially mimics a naturally occurring hormone that tells the brain the body is completely full, while simultaneously slowing down the emptying of the stomach. But this new wave of medicine is being described as having a dual action mechanism. What exactly is happening on a cellular level when we upgrade from that single pathway to a dual pathway?
The best way to visualize your metabolic system, specifically how it stores and releases energy, is to think of it as a massive, highly secure bank vault. For decades, people have been trying to break into this vault using sheer willpower, highly restrictive crash diets, and endless hours of cardio. Biologically speaking, that is like trying to pick a heavy-duty bank vault lock with a bent paperclip. The first wave of these medications came along and finally provided a very specific high-tech key. This key fits perfectly into one lock, the receptor in the brain and gut that regulates appetite and digestion. When you turn that single key, the biological alarm bells of hunger are completely silenced. You naturally eat less, your stomach processes food much slower, and the vault slowly starts to open simply because you are taking in far less energy.
So that single key is essentially a behavioral modifier disguised as a biological one. It stops the intense craving, which changes the behavior. But the new generation of medicine is not just handing you a stronger version of that same key, is it? It is handing you a second, entirely different key.
Precisely. The newer compounds are what we call dual agonists. They carry that exact same first key to shut down the hunger noise in the brain and slow down the gut. But they also carry a second key that fits into a completely different metabolic lock. This second key targets a totally different hormone receptor, one that works much more directly on how your fat cells and tissues actually handle the energy you consume. It fundamentally improves the way your body processes and partitions fuel, making your system far more sensitive and efficient. When you turn both of those keys at the exact same time, the vault doors do not just slowly creak open, they swing wide open. The clinical data reflects this beautifully. You do not just see a simple reduction in appetite, you see a profound synergistic effect that leads to significantly higher average weight loss and dramatic, rapid improvements in metabolic markers like insulin resistance. It is a much more aggressive, comprehensive biochemical intervention.
That sounds like an absolute triumph of modern medicine. If two keys open the vault faster and wider than one, it seems like the dual action approach is the undisputed, automatic winner. But nature rarely gives us a free lunch, especially when we start aggressively hacking our own evolutionary biology. What is the catch here? Because an aggressive biochemical intervention usually comes with an equally aggressive biological pushback.
You hit the nail on the head. The catch is the potential for severe collateral damage. When you utilize a compound that is this powerful, the overall body weight drops at an unprecedented, almost shocking rate. But the human body does not just selectively burn body fat while leaving everything else perfectly intact. When you are losing mass that rapidly, a highly significant portion of what you are losing is lean muscle tissue. This is the silent, devastating trap of these high-performance medications. You step on the scale every morning, and you are absolutely thrilled because the number is plummeting. But underneath the surface, you are actively losing the very metabolic engine that keeps you healthy and resilient. Muscle is not just for aesthetics, it is your body's primary sink for glucose. It is the absolute foundation of longevity and metabolic stability. If you strip away your muscle mass along with the fat, you might reach your aesthetic goal weight, but you will arrive there biologically weaker, more frail, and astonishingly, with a higher body fat percentage relative to your new, lower weight. It is a state of physiological vulnerability that clinical experts refer to as the skinny fat phenomenon.
That is a terrifying paradox when you really think about it. You are technically curing the visible symptoms of obesity, but you are actively inducing a state of hidden metabolic frailty. It really makes me question the broader societal impact of these drugs. We are essentially mass prescribing a biochemical sledgehammer to millions of people, but we are not necessarily teaching them how to rebuild the house once they knock down the walls. If someone is relying entirely on the medication to do all the heavy lifting, they are setting themselves up for a catastrophic physical rebound if they ever have to stop taking it, right?
Absolutely. And that is the great philosophical danger we are currently facing as a society. We are attempting to treat a highly complex lifestyle and environmental disease with a purely pharmaceutical solution. The drug gives you the powerful illusion of health because the primary visual marker, the excess weight, is disappearing. But true, lasting health is not merely the absence of fat. It is the presence of highly functional, resilient, active tissue. If you are not actively signaling your body to hold on to its muscle while the drug is stripping away the overall weight, you are literally accelerating your own aging process. You are trading one metabolic crisis for another. And the faster the drug works, the faster this biological degradation happens. That is the ultimate trade-off of the dual agonist approach. With more power comes a much smaller margin for error in how you manage your daily lifestyle.
So how do we actually manage it? Because clearly, just taking the weekly injection and sitting on the couch waiting for the magic to happen is a recipe for long-term disaster. If someone is utilizing these tools, whether it is the established single-key pioneer or the high-octane dual-key newcomer, what does the optimal, science-backed protocol actually look like? How do we protect that crucial metabolic engine while fully utilizing the pharmaceutical advantage?
It requires a complete and total paradigm shift in how we view medication. You have to stop viewing the injection as the cure itself and start viewing it as a temporary biological shield. It gives you the necessary breathing room to finally implement the difficult habits that were previously impossible because your own hunger hormones were constantly sabotaging you. The first, absolute non-negotiable pillar of this protocol is highly prioritized protein intake. When you are in a massive caloric deficit induced by these drugs, your body is desperately searching for energy, and it will happily break down your hard-earned muscle tissue to get it. You have to flood your system with high-quality protein to send a loud, undeniable biological signal that the muscle is currently under construction and cannot be scavenged for fuel.
And I would imagine you have to back up that nutritional signal with a physical one. You cannot just eat a high-protein diet and expect the muscle to magically stick around if you are not actively using it to move heavy things.
Exactly. Resistance training is the second mandatory pillar, and clinical experts will argue it is just as important as the drug itself. You have to train with the intense intention of building muscle, even though your primary goal is losing weight. The mechanical tension placed on the muscle fibers during resistance training is the only thing that physically convinces your evolutionary biology to preserve that tissue. If you are just doing light, casual cardio, or worse, doing nothing physical at all, the body will quickly jettison the muscle because it is simply too metabolically expensive to maintain during a famine, which is exactly what the drug is tricking your body into thinking it is experiencing.
That makes perfect evolutionary sense. But what about the dietary composition beyond just hitting a protein target? Because one thing that often gets completely overlooked in these sterile clinical discussions is the cultural reality of how real people actually eat. If you look at dietary patterns, heavily reliant on high glycemic carbohydrates, like massive portions of rice, noodles, or bread, which are foundational staples in so many cultures, does the advanced medication just magically neutralize that? Can you eat a massive plate of refined carbohydrates and just let the dual agonist handle the resulting insulin spike?
That is a brilliant question, and the answer is a definitive, resounding no. This is exactly where a massive percentage of patients run into severe trouble. The medication dramatically improves your cellular insulin sensitivity and helps your pancreas manage the glycemic load, but it is absolutely not a hall pass to consume a highly inflammatory, high glycemic diet. If you are constantly flooding your system with refined carbohydrates, you are still creating massive internal metabolic stress. You are essentially slamming your foot on the gas pedal and the brakes at the exact same time. The drug is desperately trying to quiet the system and lower blood sugar, while your diet is screaming at it to process massive amounts of glucose. Over time, that biological friction leads to intense gastrointestinal distress, completely stalled weight loss progress, and a fundamental failure to actually reverse the underlying metabolic dysfunction. You have to align your daily dietary choices with the mechanical reality of the drug.
It really sounds like taking these modern medications actually requires more discipline, not less. It demands a heightened, almost hyper-vigilant level of awareness about everything you do, including sleep, stress, and recovery. If your digestion is significantly slowed down by the medication, and you are eating a large meal late at night, your sleep architecture is going to be completely destroyed. And if you are not getting deep sleep, your cortisol spikes, your recovery stalls, and the whole biological system starts to grind to a halt.
That is the ultimate beautiful irony of this entire medical revolution. The general public looks at these injections as the ultimate shortcut, the easy way out of a difficult problem. But to use them correctly, to truly achieve a state of optimal, lasting health, you actually have to execute the absolute fundamentals of fitness, nutrition, and sleep with incredible precision. The drug does not do the work for you. It simply removes the overwhelming physiological barrier of insatiable hunger that used to make those fundamental habits feel impossible. It is a profound tool of physical empowerment, not a replacement for human effort.
That is a deeply profound way to look at it. We have spent decades desperately searching for a silver bullet, and what science finally handed us was a master key. But a key only unlocks the door. You still have to be the one to physically turn the handle, walk through the frame, and painstakingly build what is on the other side. Whether you are using the established single pathway tool or the incredibly potent dual action compound, the biological reality remains exactly the same. You simply cannot outsource your vitality to a syringe. You can use it to quiet the noise, to temporarily level a biologically unfair playing field, but the real, grueling work of building a resilient, long-lasting human body still rests entirely on your own shoulders.
And I truly believe that is the most empowering realization of all. We finally have the advanced medical technology to correct the deep biological misfires that have kept millions of people trapped in an endless cycle of obesity and despair. But the ultimate future of human health is not going to be found solely in a pharmaceutical laboratory. It is going to be found in how intelligently we integrate these extraordinary scientific advancements with the timeless, undeniable principles of human movement, conscious nourishment, and daily discipline. The new era of clinical obesity medicine is officially here, but it is entirely up to us to decide if we are going to use it merely to shrink ourselves or to actually become stronger.
A truly perfect thought to end on. The scientific tools have evolved, but the ultimate responsibility is still ours. Next time, we will be diving deep into the fascinating, microscopic world of gut health, exploring how to naturally manage the digestive fallout of these powerful modern interventions, and what your microbiome is actually trying to tell you about your overall health. Until then, keep questioning the shortcuts and keep building the foundation